Let's talk about how to stop the cycle of worrying. So here's how it often goes with worry. A few years ago, I had a big talk coming up. I was looking forward to it. I'd prepared for it for a long time. And then, about a week or so before the talk, when I felt like I was ready for it and I thought it'd probably go well, I was suddenly seized with this thought, what if I get a migraine the day of the talk? So I get migraines from time to time, maybe a few times a year, and they can be pretty debilitating. And that's how worry pretty much always starts, is with that question, what if? So that's step one. And then step two is that triggers anxiety. There's some kind of outcome we're afraid of. We don't want it to happen. I didn't want to get a migraine headache. And so that triggers anxiety because it's this outcome in the future that we can't entirely control. So that's an uncomfortable state to be in. We don't like just kind of hanging out, not knowing what's going to happen if something bad could happen to us. And so step three is, and this is where worry comes in, we try to do some kind of mental control. So that's what worry really is. It's not the anxiety itself. It's that effort to somehow control the outcome. So what I did in this situation is I started thinking, okay, so how often do I get migraines? How long has it been since I've gotten one in the past? Are there certain things I can do, like trying to avoid foods that may or may not be related to getting a migraine, or all these things that I was tossing around in my mind because I wanted to make sure that things were going to be okay. And then what usually follows after we've worried is some kind of relief, some kind of feeling like, okay, things are going to be okay, I can control this. Maybe we've thought through and we realize, like, okay, the thing I'm afraid of is really unlikely to happen. Like, I don't usually get migraines. I haven't not been able to give a talk before because of a migraine. Or we also might just feel relieved because, in a way, the brain doesn't tell a difference between actually doing an action to take care of something or doing this kind of mental activity to try to control things. And so it gives us this sense of control, that I'm doing something. I'm not just sitting here kind of waiting for something bad to happen. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to somehow, with my mind, figure out how I can make things be okay. So that relief is the final step in the worry process. But of course, our worry doesn't end there, right? It keeps coming back. It is a cycle. Because what happens is, if we get to that end, we say like, okay, as far as I know, things will probably be okay. The brain can always come back with, but what if? How do you know? We can't guarantee the thing we're afraid of won't happen. And so that fear creeps back in. That what if question triggers the cycle and we're back in it. And here's part of what's really interesting, but also frustrating about worry, is that without realizing it, by worrying, we're actually making it more likely that we'll keep worrying. So here's why. One reason is if you worry about something and then that thing doesn't happen, the brain makes the connection that what you worried about didn't happen because you worried. Now, we know from research that well over 90% of the things that we worry about don't end up happening. So, without meaning to, we're training ourselves all the time to keep worrying because the brain keeps thinking like, good thing you worried, that's why that thing didn't happen. We're also training ourselves to keep worrying because a little bit of relief that we get, that feeling that I'm doing something or that I've convinced myself things are going to be okay, that's a highly rewarding experience to the brain. So removing that sense of threat is really reinforcing. So we're really training ourselves to keep being watchful, to keep being vigilant, to make sure that nothing bad is going to happen, which just means more worry, more of the same. So how can we break out of this cycle? The key, the really important thing to do is to stop that automatic response of trying to reassure ourselves and think through with our mental activity and make sure things are going to be okay. And instead, to really do the opposite. So in this talk I was going to give example, that would mean accepting the possibility that I could get a migraine. So when my mind said, what if you get a migraine? The best response would be, that might happen. That's a possibility. And if it does, I'll just have to deal with it. Rather than saying, oh yeah, I have to make sure that doesn't happen. What can I do to be certain that I prevent that? Because all that does is keeps us stuck in that up and down cycle of what if, worry. But what if, worry. We can cut that off by just kind of rolling with it. Like, yep, that could happen. And it's probably going to feel uncomfortable to do that because our automatic response is going to be, but I don't want that to happen. And then we get back into the worry cycle. We can just notice when that happens and just come back with patience, not judging our minds for what they're doing, being patient with ourselves and just saying, right, yes, those things could happen, but I don't want them to happen. Right, me either. But we don't have that kind of power. And by taking on that responsibility to be sure that things are okay, when we don't have that type of control, it just creates unnecessary stress and tension, and of course, more worry. Now, the final element here in breaking that cycle is, it really comes out of a mindfulness approach. And that is to step back in a way from seeing things as either for us or against us, either good or bad. So either I'm going to not get a migraine and be able to give the talk that I want to, and that's good, or I won't be able to, and that's bad. It's going to be either a gain or a loss. It's going to be either pleasure or pain. So that way of dividing up our experience really just creates a lot of tension and struggle with life itself. Because, as I'm sure you know from personal experience, a lot of the time life doesn't go the way we would like it to. So if we can start to step back from dividing things up in that way and just be open as much as possible to things as they will unfold. Not that we don't have preferences. I would certainly like to be healthy and at my best no matter what I have to do, talk or otherwise. But we don't have to demand that life constantly give us what we're looking for. And instead, it's the same kind of deal saying, you know, I might get a migraine, I might not. Whatever happens, I'll deal with it as it comes. We can do the same thing across the board in our lives. Now, I'm not suggesting this is easy or automatic, and definitely not that I do this effortlessly all the time. But as we start to practice this, we start to find more peace in our lives, and the best kind of peace, the type that doesn't depend on our circumstances. So let me know how this goes. Thanks a lot for watching.